So, this is a CJAM Oral History interview for the Oral History Project, where we are celebrating 40 years on the FM dial. My name is Olivia Patricia, and today I am joined by Chris Burston. We are sitting in the large production studio here at CJAM. It is Tuesday, August 1st, and it is 6:05 p.m. How are you doing, Chris?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for asking.
Thanks for joining me here today to talk about your history with the station. I was wondering if you could start by introducing yourself and where you're from.
As you said previously, my name is Chris Burston. I'm a Windsor resident. I grew up in Riverside, Ontario, in the east end of town. I became aware of CJAM in the late 70s when a friend of mine was going to school here at the Communication Studies Department, and we'll mention his name, Martin Boutet. He did a great show here for many years. It was called 20 Flight Rock. He did mostly rockabilly, early rockabilly, and classic rock and roll. So he was doing the show on the Carrier Current side back when CJAM was doing that back in the late 70s. By 1980, I was working downtown at a record store and trying to get my feet in when young lady came down with a poster for a summer grant position. I think that might sound familiar to you. And it was for people to come in and help out to do programming at the station and get some experience in radio. And I thought, oh, well, this is perfect for me. But unfortunately, it was for students only. But that gave me the impetus to come down and have a look around and start helping Marty out with this program. And then by 1981, I had started school part-time. So back then, you had to be a student to be part of CJAM. So I started in part-time working with Lucia Zadeb. She was our special programming director at that time. Some names I'll try and come up with, but she's the person that got me involved initially. She really wanted me to do a local music program, so that's what I got involved in first. That program was called Debuts. It was a half-hour show, and I would go out and do interviews with local artists, local bands, whoever I could drag up at that time. So that takes us to 1980. Should I just carry on?
You know what? You're on a roll. Keep going.
Let's see. By 1982, I was a full-time student here in the Communication Studies Department with eyes toward a career in radio. And we had been getting inklings that our approval for our FM license was very close. So that was a very exciting time. So I started doing a regular programming then. I think the debuts program lasted that year as well. But I got more involved with the station at the time. The station was growing as it needed to be. I became friends with Russ Wolski, who eventually became our manager. And at the time, you had to be voted in as station manager. It was a very different time, very different situation. We were more considered a club, so we had rules and a constitution and things like that. So there's a bit of upheaval just before we got approval for our FM license, and Russ was voted in as station manager. And I was happy to just be a programmer at the time. By the summer of 1983, our program director, Richard Houghton, had graduated from school, and he was working with the Promise of Performance and getting the programming together, and he got a job offer in Toronto. So Russ came to me and said, look, you're the next person I would ask, and pretty much the only person I would ask to do this at this time. So I'd be like, yeah, okay. And frankly, it took me from being a tardy, lazy student, as I have always been, to having a full-time job at the station and being a full-time student as well. So it was a pretty difficult period for me, but I would have to say one of the most rewarding times of my life, going from that time where we only had pieces of paper with a promise of performance and no programming staff, just some specialty programs, some great people that were already a couple years into their volunteerism. And so we worked on that through the summer. Russ and I worked with Leo Ogata, who was our engineer at the time. We got the antenna up that summer. There's pictures in their foyer here of that event. That was pretty exciting. And
Actually, Mark Sikich came by and I interviewed him.
Yep.
And he brought Walter and I out to the lobby, and he was like, "Oh, I took those pictures."
He did, yeah. And Mark was a longtime volunteer far before I got involved. He was a student prior to that, and in the engineering department. I mean, it's neither here nor there, but he was also a very early person and a big influence on us back then. So yeah, he was here. So yeah, we got the antenna going, and we were doing tests on the air, which was really exciting because you're sitting at home and Leo would call me and say, turn on your radio. I'm going to do some testing. And we'd throw some records on, and there was a bit of a discussion. I'll tell a bit of a story. There's a bit of a discussion on Facebook lately about what the first record was played on FM. And Leo chirped up one time and said, well, Chris Burston picked out the first record, and it was the MC5 Kick Out the Jams. And everybody's like, no, that's not right. That's not right. And I'm like, Leo, that's not right, because we all decided it would be Ghost Town. Patrick Petro came up with the idea of Ghost Town, and it was absolutely perfect. Everybody agreed that, this is the song. So Leo reminded me about the testing days. He goes, well, I called you one time. You were in the on-air room, and I was up on the top of Mac Hall, and we needed to play a record. He said, put a record on. I'm like, oh, geez, I don't have one. Wait, I know what to play. I'll be right back. And I went and grabbed the MC5, the Kick Out the Jams record, and I put that on. One of my favorite records of all time. So it is part of the history and part of the lore of being one of the first records played on air. But we also played all kinds of stuff just for testing purposes only. And I'm not going to go through the list of stuff we played, because some of it was kind of silly, but that sums that up. And
I want to jump back to Ghost Town by the Specials. Why was that song chosen?
Have you talked to Patrick Petro?
I haven't.
Well, you should get him in here, because we had an executive, and Patrick Petro was our music director, and he's just an amazing musical mind. And one of my dear friends from that period. So we bounced off, so many songs. And as you can try to imagine, we have to pick one song out of everything.
So many songs.
What do you choose? Mm-hmm. So he came up with that. He just came to us one day, Russ and I and whoever else was saying, I've got it. And we yes. I'm glad that you came up with that song, and glad that we can finally make a decision and close that door. And it was perfect. And I'm really embarrassed to say that I was responsible for keeping the tape of that first portion of the, and I don't have it. And I have regretted this forever. And if people will hear this at some point on the air, and I'm still going to try and kick the cans and see if somebody actually has a recording of that first day. I'm sure that one exists there somewhere. It was one of those things where people had it. Yeah, I'll get a copy of it. And I was the one that was supposed to record it, but I was so busy that day trying to get on there.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So I'll give you a little bit of background of what I did to get ready for that. So I had this idea of a montage. and that's what I put together. Just a lot of ambient sounds, sound effects record sounds. It ended with the crescendo from A Day in the Life by the Beatles. So all this montage of stuff, it was really confusing and really, I was switching channels and doing all, throwing loops in and just doing, and all this had to be done using splicing by manual and taping things together. So I did what I thought was a really good montage, and then from the end of the Sgt. Pepper thing, which ends with like an orchestral boom, I faded up a heartbeat from nowhere, just a heartbeat, and I let that play, and then I came on, and I said, "Welcome to the initial broadcast day of CJAM FM," and I don't think I said much else, and then in came Ghost Town.
That is so cool.
It was beyond cool. It's like, it's one of the defining moments of my life, truly. We worked so hard to get to where we were, and to finally be standing on the precipice of that cliff and jump off was wow. Little known fact, I chose the second song all by myself, and it's not well known what it is. Tangled Up in Blue by Bob Dylan.
I love Bob Dylan.
And early morning programming was folk music from 6 till 9. And our first DJ, if we can call her that, and she was a programmer, was Patty. And her name escapes me now, but we called her Purple Patty because she was a huge Prince fan. And she wore purple all the time, just like Prince did, right? Back in the 80s. And so she was the first one on air after that. So she played folk music that we had scheduled for that. So that was it. And we popped a bottle of champagne down here in these offices and had a little drink with orange juice. And that's how it started. And
that was the end of, I think it was a 13-year journey to get that FM license.
Yes.
So what a day. So what happened since? We got our license November 14th, 1983. What was your involvement with the station after that?
Well, backing up a bit, I was trying desperately to get this started. It was all on me, right? I was a program director. You need to get this program on the air. We need to get volunteers. We need to get it all slotted in. So I had it all drawn up and everything. And it was like, okay, look, everybody's here for school. If you're a student or, we're gonna run this every day. Come and do your show every day. And, if you're a special program, you can do it again once we go FM. It doesn't matter. But I want you here. I want you practicing. I want this to be live. So for, I would say, about the middle of October, we started doing that. And my initial idea was to go on Halloween. That's what I wanted to do. Why not? Special day.
And that still worked so well with the Ghost Town.
Yeah. So I wanted to do that, but we just weren't ready. So 2 weeks we were on the air after that. So again, please ask me your question again.
What happened? I guess what role did you play following 1983, the first broadcast?
I stayed as program director for 2 years. By the end of the second year, I was co-program director with Fraser Petley. He was our production manager. Prior to that, he did spoken word and I did music. So I was finishing off my scholastic career here, and I needed to put an ending point to that. I would have loved to have stayed. I mean, everybody I know in college radio has stayed longer than they should have, and especially back then. But I needed to put a point where I can move on because I needed to get out and get a job. So I stayed doing my my show, the TNK program. That's the program I did What I did was I played album sides, brand new releases. So it was a 2-hour show. I did 1 hour on one album, another album, and play the whole thing.
Nice.
Yeah. So back in the cassette taping days, people loved it. So I'm told. But that wasn't the focus of the program.
And I heard you were a part of this show called Friday with the Paisleys.
Yes, yeah. And back in as program director, it was my job to kind of dig out programming ideas, as you probably know. And I always wanted a rock and roll show.
Yeah.
I'm a rock and roll guy from way back when. And at the time, late 70s and early 80s, rock and roll was not cool. People were opposed to rock and roll. No. We're playing new music, modern music. This is what we're doing. I'm like, yeah, okay, but we need to pay homage to rock and roll. That music is fabulous, and there's such a great history behind it. So I tried to get a rock and roll program. Several people did it on different nights. But finally, Mark Sikich stepped up and said, look, I've got the best host we could do. Give me a chance with this, and we'll do, give me an hour on Friday night after Marty's show, because it kind of went in with Marty Boutet's show, 20 Flight Rock and roll there. He said, we'll do psychedelic rock and stuff like that. Perfect. And he found this guy, and his name was Rock Conley, and they just did an amazing show. Fantastic. And I eventually joined what was called the Paisley production crew. And this after Rock had left to do teaching out of town. So Mark stayed on, Matt Zalev joined on, Tony Pitchinen joined on, and it was a rock and roll show. It was a deconstruction show. If it was just, we did whatever we wanted. We would mix records together at the same time to get that phasing effect.
Yeah.
We would turn we would turn records off and just let them slow down and then play something underneath it. It was experimental. We pushed the envelope with it. And we did that for quite a few years.
And I heard that this show was quite scripted. Like, there was so much hard work that went into it. I was talking with Mark Sikich, and he said that Rock Conley, he would come in from Detroit.
Yes. And
on the tunnel bus, he would be writing scripts for the Paisleys.
Very, very well prepared production guy. It was such a good show at that time, and that's one of the reasons why I went on board with the show after he left. Is I loved the show so much, I wanted it to carry on. And even after we left, Rob Brun took it over, and they were on air, I think, for 10 years or more. Won Jammies galore, and did a really super, super job with the show. So it really had quite a long history here.
Mm-hmm. I actually found a piece of that history. I laughed when seeing this because I know you from the 40th anniversary committee. Mm-hmm. So in it's sort of like a professional sense, but I was going through old files and I found this letter from Mark Fedek.
Mark was he was our station manager, or was he program director?
He was program director.
Yes.
It was from January 5th, 1990. It's for Chris Burston, Matt Zalev, Mark Sikich, and Rob Brun, and it says, "It has come to my attention that on Friday, December 30th, 1989, Fuck, My Shit Stinks by the Dayglow Abortions was aired on your program. And you guys got in trouble for playing this song, which resulted in, what was it? A small suspension from Friday with the Paisleys."
Yeah. Yeah, to tell the story, and perhaps Mark told the story as well, but here we are on air, and Mark comes in, and he was quite intimidated by us, I think, but he comes in and shows us this letter, and he goes, "Well, I'm sorry, but we're going to have to suspend you for this," and we're like, What happened? And he told us, and we didn't know that this had occurred. We were away, and Rob's friend filled in.
No.
Yes, and played this song And like he comes in and we're on the air and we're like, what are you talking about? We never played this song. We wouldn't play this, Mark. What? He goes, well, it was played, blah, blah, blah. And we looked at each other. Oh, it was when that guy was here.
No.
So we're like, okay, so we shut the record off and let it slow down, and we just left. Just, the rock and roll a-holes that we were, and we left Mark, and we walked out the door, and Mark's like, I kind of expected you to finish your show today, and we're like, look, we had nothing to do with this. We're out.
Was that the end of Friday with the Paisley? No, it wasn't, because it went on longer than that.
A lot longer.
A lot longer than that.
Oh yeah, yeah. We came back after that.
Oh, of course.
I have probably 20 cassette tapes of the shows we used to do. So there's a ton of history of the madness that went on. Very little of it is of us speaking, but just music. Mm-hmm. Because we used to take the summer off, and I'd come in with a box of tapes. I say, there you go, Mark. There's our summer programming. Mm. And he would sit, or somebody would operate, and they would play these tapes. And I remember hearing one time that when we came on and talked, he's going, oh, there's a Paisley actually talking on these tapes. You don't usually hear that. So I've got a lot of that for you that I can digitize, and I hope we can use this as part of the audio archive, because it's
it's
good stuff, and it's rock and roll. It's a lot of Detroit rock and roll. It's a lot of great stuff. I have a particular 3-hour session that both 20 Flight Rock and Friday Rocks did on Detroit rock alone, and Rock Conley was an absolute expert in Detroit rock and roll, and he had all these singles from the punk rock era and from before that. It's brilliant, and I have that for you.
That's amazing. I'm so excited to listen to these. Was there any other memories that stand out from your time at CJAM that you want to share?
There's so many. The bands used to call me when they would come through town. And a lot of the bands, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but a lot of bands coming through to Detroit would come through from Toronto. Mm. So they're driving through Windsor anyway. So I would tell their managers, look, stop in the station. If you're going to take the bridge, or take the bridge, and just stop into the station and do a live session. So we had a lot of great artists come through, and it was really great. One of the more memorable ones for me, and it's not a band that's really well known, but they were the DBs. They were from the East Coast, and they're pretty well regarded. And they dropped in, and they did an acoustic session and did a great live interview. But it was a lot of the live stuff that happened. We used to do a lot of live sports programming that was really good. A lot of the interviews I got to do with bands from that era is really a highlight of my my career in radio. I did a very early interview with Larry Mullen from U2. Bands like A Flock of Seagulls, Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark. I did one of the ones that's most special and dear to my heart was the keyboardist from Genesis called me. I asked specifically because I knew they were doing press on this certain album, and they agreed. And I did an interview with him over the phone, and they invited us to come to the show. And he asked specifically to see me because I went through and said, okay, we're done with this album. Would you mind talking about some of your other records? And I went through all the B-sides that I had in my collection. And he couldn't believe I was talking about these songs because no one had ever asked him these questions before.
Really?
Yeah, so that was really a highlight of my
That sounds
career.
so special.
And a lot of people have said that show that I did was probably one of the best.
What show was that one on?
That was on TNK.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Tomorrow Never Knows.
Tomorrow Never Knows. What was the inspiration behind that name?
Beatles song.
Ah.
Looking for a name for my show. Tony Peachinen, who was my roommate at the time, he came out, he goes, Tomorrow Never Knows, TNK, this is a great song. And it's a really long song. It's got like nice instrumental breaks in it. And what I liked about it is I had about 5 different versions that I could use. A lot of different people covered it. Phil Collins was one of them. I can't remember the rest of them offhand, but that was my theme song. I did that show for probably 6 years.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah, I really love doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's Tuesday nights, 10 to midnight.
Oh, that's a fun time slot.
Yeah, and that at the original programming hours we had were to midnight only.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when we shut down.
Nice, nice. What is it like being on the 40th anniversary committee 40 years after, being the first person to speak on air at CJAM?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I've always tried to keep in touch with the executive here to let them know that I'm here in the community. If you need any help, any advice, I'm always here for you. All the station managers we've had along the way, I've always made that call and say, yeah, I'm here, whatever I can do to help. Walter's no exception. So I said, yeah, this is coming up. Let's, whatever I can do, I'd be glad to help. I'm not sure how much help I've been so far. But I helped plan some of the other ones previous to this. I've donated some of my archive stuff to the station for that. But yeah, looking back and thinking about 40 years, it's, everybody will tell you that, time is fleeting and it goes by in the blink of an eye. And I don't feel any different now than I did then. I know I look a lot different, but they say that your brain kind of locks in at a time when it's developing, when you're feeling the most fulfilled or you're having the most fun. And I think my head kind of locked in at that time. I was a bit of an older student. I took a couple of years off before I came to university. So, yeah, it's very odd thinking it's been that long.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not. It's a small period of time. It really is.
Yeah.
And not a lot has changed here. The station remains the same, right? It's run by tape stuck together with peanut butter, and it's a very small amount of very dedicated people. And my hat goes off to all the people who have done this over the years and to the people who are here now carrying on. It's important work. It really is.
And it's been hard to keep this station going. Like over and over, we've had cuts to funding. There was an issue, I think it was in 2015, where we lost a lot of our student levy, but nonetheless, CJAM was a station that persevered, and we're still standing.
Yes. I'm not sure if others have fallen by the wayside. Is that what you know? Or, and I know back when we first started, I think we were pretty well funded by the student levy.
Mm-hmm.
We had a funding drive, I think, in 1984, and we raised the highest amount of a first fund drive of any other station in Canada.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and it really showed how much we got into the community. It's just too bad that we couldn't have been a stronger station when we first went FM.
Oh, but that's so hard.
Yeah, and even now at 500 watts, we're covering our community in Essex County, to a certain extent. But it's really too bad that we couldn't have branched over and been part of the Detroit community, because we really were downtown Detroit, but that's about it.
Yeah.
Because at that time there was nothing else like us. Public radio was just barely scratching with small programming, but for full time, we really could have had a much a broader effect if we had more power. But it is what it is.
And it's expensive to get power.
Yes, yeah.
There's been so many, or a handful of power increases, and each time it's always such a long like hard process, and there's raising money, and then there's the CRTC and the NCRA and all of these other bigwig organizations that, you know, kind of control all of this, and it's bureaucratic. It takes a while.
Yeah, and you know, like I said, my hats are off to everybody that keeps this place going. We've got to keep it going. We've got to keep this thing rolling.
Yeah, I hope to be here, or I hope to be at an anniversary. You know, 80th anniversary. I'll be there.
You'll come back. I'll be here for the 50th. I can say that much at least. At least I hope.
Do you have any silly or bizarre stories of things that have happened in the CJAM stations that you'd like to share?
I'd like to say I do, but I would have had to have thought this up in advance. The Friday with the Paisleys was an experience that I had. I can't think of something off the top of my head. There are so many things that happen day to day. I know I used to. The funny things I used to do was, because I was a full-time staff member, if somebody didn't show up for their shift, it was always me. And I would always be there training the new people, and I was a bit crazy in how I would change my mind at the last minute about the record I wanted to play, and we're talking about vinyl. So I would take the record off and I'd give it to the intern and change my mind and scratch it up and get it ready to go. And I did that so much on the fly. I just thought of something, and it's eluded me. But
I was chatting with Kelly Hargraves.
Yeah, it's Kelly, a great volunteer. Yes.
She told me a story about how one time, I think you were away and you had pre-recorded your show in some capacity.
Yes.
But the person who was playing it maybe like fell asleep.
Well, what I used to do was, if I couldn't make my show, I would just record the vocal parts. Just do all the research stuff, and then you just play the record. So I think I was actually at a job interview up Toronto way, and I don't know who ended up there ended up not being someone monitoring the show. They just put the tape on, thinking it was a full show, and let it run. And I was driving on the 401, listening to my show.
No.
Yes. and you know, it gets to where the song is supposed to start up, and I'm like, oh no, there's nobody there. And this is 1985, 86.
There's no cell phones.
There's no cell phones. I can't stop the car and try and talk. And so I'm just listening to this driving down the 401. And I think I was close enough to get back here in time, because what happened was the vice president of the student council came down, and he started playing records after there was dead air. I don't know how he found out. Somebody must have told him. He was up in the SAC office, and he came down. And he started playing some really bad records. And I drove into the parking lot, ran down the stairs. I'm like, Kevin, what are you doing? He goes, well, somebody had to play something. And I'm like, well, thank you for doing that, but I'll take over. Yeah, that was, thank you for reminding me of that, Kelly. No, I wish I could say there. I mean, I have a lifetime of memories from this place, and you know, so many little things. But that's one thing that happened to me on my show.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you would like to share before I ask you my last question?
No. I've always I really enjoyed my time here. It's exactly what I anticipated it would be, if not better. Right? I mean, I got to meet some really great people, some really great artists over the time. I got to know all the record reps in Detroit, and we had some really, really, really good times over there at concerts and stuff once CJAM got going. And it's just the family here, and you know this because you come so close with this little staff that's here, and I'm sure it's even smaller than I can imagine. But it's very near and dear to my heart, and it always will be. So it's wonderful to be able to celebrate the 40th, and I'm really looking forward to seeing some of those people when they're here.
I'm excited to meet a lot of these people in person because I've been doing so many of these interviews over the phone or over a video call. Mm-hmm. So I'm very excited to connect with these people.
Yeah. Have you been concentrating in one era? I'm from the 80s, so have you been able to get any 70s people?
Yeah,
90s?
I got Mark Sikich, Gary Wells. He wasn't a CJAMer, but he's Cameron Wells' dad, and Cameron Wells does a show called Handy Link.
Okay.
And Gary Wells was actually a part of the SAC. He was the president, and him and Tosh Noma and Cliff Wilson would drive back and forth from Ottawa, getting the FM license and doing the paperwork for that.
Yeah, that's prior to my time here.
So that was amazing. And then I'm trying to get an interview with Rock Connolly.
He should. Yeah, he's out east.
Yeah, so we're still trying to figure that out. But I'm crossing my fingers that I can get him on, get him to be a part of this project as well. But yeah, 70s, 80s, 90s,
yeah,
2000s.
And now we go 210, 220.
220, and the future.
The future, yeah.
Before we wrap up, I have one last question that I've been trying to ask everyone I've been interviewing. But if someone is listening on the radio right now who might be interested in getting involved with CJAM in some sort of capacity, what advice would you give them?
Get your ideas in order. Write a prospectus. It's not just a one-day thing. If you are doing a specialty program, there is a lot of work required in the background. I worked in professional radio for a while, and I had no idea how much work goes into being on air every day. So doing a specialty program is I think a wonderful idea because and you can, if you have a real knowledge in that area, that makes a really good program. But it also does require a lot of work. So make sure you do your homework first. And if you're just looking at coming in and doing a mosaic program, come down and do it. It's the most eye-opening thing and ear-opening thing you'll do. It's just a lot of fun, from the people who call in and make requests to the music you've never heard before, and get to play to people.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you for
sharing these so special memories.